Sadhu Sundar Singh, Call of God, Chapter 12, Early Experiences as a Sadhu. Quote, "He which converts the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death, and shall hide a multitude of sins." Unquote, James 5:20. Quote, "Joy shall be in heaven over one sinner that repenteth." Unquote, Luke 15:7. The years 1911 and 1912 were spent in touring in Guwahati, India, Nepal, Kulu, that's Kulu, the Punjab, and many other places. While each year during the 6 months of hot weather, the Sadhu went alone to Tibet. The following incidents give some idea of his life and work at that time. Sundar Singh was one day making his way to a certain village when he caught sight of two men in front of him, one of whom suddenly disappeared. A little further on, he overtook the remaining man, who accosted him, and pointing to a sheeted figure on the ground, told that Sadhu that this was his friend who had died by the way, and he had no money to bury him. Sundar had only his blanket and 2 pice, P-I-C-E, which had been given him for the toll bar, but these he gave to the man and passed on his way. He had not gone far when the man came running after him and sobbed out that his companion was really dead. And Sadhu did not understand until he began to explain that it was their custom to take it in turns to prey on the public by pretending one of them was dead. This they had done for years, but that day when the man went back to call his friend, there was no response, and on lifting the cloth, he was horror-stricken to find him actually dead. The wretched man sought the Sadhu's forgiveness, being assured that here was some great saint whom he had robbed of all he had, and thus had the dire displeasure of the gods fallen upon him. Then Sundar spoke to him of the Lord of life, and in that penitent moment the man accepted the message. He sent him to a mission station near Guwahati, India, where in due time he was baptized. On one of his long journeys in the mountains of the footpath divided at a certain point, and he was in doubt as to which path to take. He chose the wrong one, and upon arrival at a village, he found he had gone 11 miles out of his way. Turning back, Sundar met a man with whom he entered into conversation and began to speak to him of Christ. Then the man produced from the folds of his cloth a copy of the New Testament, which he confessed to having hid when he saw the Sadhu coming, in the belief that he was a Hindu sannyasi. The man had doubts to which he could find no solution, but Sundar so dealt with them that the man found Christ. In speaking of this to the writer, Sundar remarked, "Then I knew why I had gone astray, for Christ had sent me to help this anxious soul." At Narkanda, Narkanda, the Sundar found some men reaping in a field. Joining them, he spoke to them as they worked of Jesus and eternal things. At first they listened with indifferency and then with disapprobation. They had no mind to hear about a strange religion. Some of the men began to curse and threaten him, and one took up a stone and hit him on the head. After a time, the man who had thrown the stone was seized with a severe headache and had to stop work. The Sadhu then took up the slith and reaped with the others. This softened their hearts, and at the end of the day, the men invited him to accompany them home. In the quiet of the evening, a better opportunity was afforded for the giving of his message, and then he went away. The reapers, having rested, began to take stock of the harvest gathered that day, and to their astonishment found a greater yield than they had had in previous years. They were then afraid and declared among themselves that a holy man had visited them, and this increase was proof of it. Then they strove to find the Sadhu that they might give better heed to his message, but found him nowhere. This incident was published in the North Indian paper, the NUR, then AFSHAM, by one of the men present on the occasion, who made an appeal through its pages to Sundar to return amongst them that they might receive his message. At the ancient city of Jalalabad, the Sadhu found himself among a cruel and treacherous people, who, seeing he was a Christian, laid a plot to take his life. Sitting to rest himself, the news was brought to him by one less evil disposed than the rest, But as he had done nothing to warrant such a thing, he found it difficult to believe it possible. However, he decided to take the warning to seek a safer retreat. Only the common serai, infested with mosquitoes and viler insects, remained, so to this he went. Next morning, when he had lit a fire and was drying his wet clothes, a number of the Parthians arrived. Much to his amazement, the foremost of these men came in and fell at his feet. The Parthian then explained how they had sought to take his life, but seeing him had altered their intention. For instance, of his being frozen as they had expected, he was well and none the worse for his experiences. They were driven to believe that here was one favorite of Allah, and they begged that he would accept of their hospitality and accompany them home. The Sadhu spent a very happy week with them, and they gave good heed to his teaching, so that he believes there will be fruit of his labors amongst these rough and hardened men. End of chapter 12, having been read by Peter John Paresis.